I have collaborators in the most rural places, Aceh, Indonesia, which got totaled by the tsunami, rural Western Kenya, who send me text messages all the time. It's almost a problem, actually. They send me text messages all the time, which they pay for because it costs 2 cents for them to send a text message from, say, rural Western Kenya to wherever I happen to be in Washington, D.C. Again, think of the implications of this kind of technology. What can you do with this kind of technology? And people, I find when I talk to tech people, I was at a conference called eTech out in San Diego a few months ago. And there's a fellow, a well-known tech blogger, and he raised his hand during the question and answer period, and he said, well, you want to write stuff for cell phones, and it's very difficult to write software for cell phones because there's very little standardization, et cetera, et cetera. And he gave me lots of legitimate reasons why there are many difficulties in writing software, say, for cell phones. But the fact is, as I told him, that's kind of like saying, well, someone's just invented the telegraph, and we're going to choose not to use it. Right? We're not going to use it until we get the World Wide Web. Because you can't do with the telegraph what you can do with the World Wide Web. Now, of course, what you could do with the telegraph is revolutionize news, revolutionize communications with the telegraph. Right? I mean, the telegraph was a game changer back in that day. And so, again, the idea that we should be unhappy because we can't, use the very, very fastest technology with the entire world population, I'm not in that crowd. People, and including this tech blogger I was talking about, was basically saying, what can you do? Cell phones have slow processors, they have low bandwidth. And I said, let's not forget about our beloved computers back in the day, like the original IBM PC, right? 4.8 megahertz, 64K of RAM. My iPhone, which of course is like, the current pinnacle, right, for about another 6 months, I'm sure. The current pinnacle has 8 gigabytes of RAM storage on it. The original Apple Macintosh, 8 megahertz. My Palm Trio 650, which is, by no means the pinnacle, although it probably was maybe 3 years ago, 312 megahertz. I mean, we're talking orders of magnitude difference, and this is on a cell phone. Not to say, of course, that of course, it's not a limitation to have a tiny little screen. That is a limitation. But let's not forget about all the capability that we have. Let's think back to that Gopher command search box, which could easily have fit on the screen of any cell phone. Let's think back to that keyhole, that window that we have, that anybody standing in rural Africa or rural Southeast Asia has, that connection to all the information in the cloud, at least all the text information in the cloud. Think about that when you try to think about what to do with this incredible technology, and what, especially people at a conference like this, can be thinking about how can we bring information to these people. I'm often, people will tell me, well, in the spectrum from the phone to the modern, personal computer, like the laptop, people will often, they'll say, well, you're trying to say that the cell phone is exactly like a laptop. And I'm saying, no, I'm not trying to say that. I'm trying to say that most people in developed countries, I notice, when they think of phones, they think of them as things to make voice calls with, by and large. Text messaging is becoming more and more important. Some people now are, of course, have BlackBerries, but even BlackBerries is mostly corporate, right? And most people with cell phones, most individuals with cell phones, just use them to make calls, voice calls. And so, most people, I would say, and this is a little bit of an exaggeration, when they think of a cell phone, they think of something that's kind of like that old black ancient desk phone. And, if you did that, of course, you'd be making a mistake, because a cell phone, of course, is quite a bit more advanced. Now, of course, if you thought of a cell phone as being exactly like a laptop, you'd be making a mistake as well, right? Because it doesn't have the same capabilities, the screen is smaller, it's not as fast, doesn't have the same memory yet, etc. But my point is just that this is where I think the cell phone is. And the fact is, if you, when I say cell phone, you think about this black phone over here, you're going to be off by all this. That's going to be your error. And if you make the mistake of thinking a cell phone is like a laptop, well, you're going to be making a mistake, but you're going to be making a smaller mistake. You're going to be less off the mark in terms of developing or thinking about technology or how you can bring, again, information to people. And so I tell people, free your mind. Free your mind. Do not think about what could you do if or when everybody had a computer like the computer that you have. Right? Which is basically what people are doing. They're saying, oh wow, it's great they have cell phones. Pretty soon they'll have laptops. Then we can start thinking what we can do for people in developing countries, or how we can develop software or develop services for people in developing countries. Don't do that. Ask yourself, what can you do with the computer? Right? Think back at that slide about the original Macintosh and the original PC. Think about Gopher. Think about the telegraph, for heaven's sake. Right? Think about what you can do with the computer that they already have bought and paid for themselves in their pocket. So what about some examples of things that we can do? How about giving people, just simply giving people anywhere the ability to search the textual information on the internet? Just like Gopher, basically. What about doing Gopher via SMS? I mean, was those Gopher searches, or for that matter, a Google search? Nowadays, a Google search, most people are searching text by typing in text and looking for text. Would that be useful on a phone? I think so. Google's pretty useful. Right? What about that? How about giving certain groups, special groups like doctors or teachers, access to specialized materials, which are mostly textual again? I mean, I have very fancy stuff on my phone that when I'm in the hospital working, I can pull up not only the descriptions in text about drugs and dosages, et cetera, but even a little picture of the pill and what it looks like, et cetera, or what color it is, that kind of stuff. Extremely useful. But would it be useful to me if I didn't have the picture and I just had the dosages and the interactions and all that other stuff? Absolutely. I have a little functionality on my phone where I can say the patient is taking these 2 drugs and I want to give him this other drug. Tell me if that's okay. Search through all the interactions. That's completely implementable using just SMS, right? All you'd have to do is SMS a message saying patient's age, weight, and the name of the 3 medications. And you'd get back an SMS message saying, that's okay. Do we think that would be useful to clinicians all throughout the developing world? How about, and again, a lot of these examples are medical or public health related because that's most of what we do at my organization, but how about giving people the ability to manage a medical record on their phone, right? We talk about portable medical records, et cetera. I mean, we're working on a project right now that allows rural clinicians who take care of children and provide vaccinations, et cetera, to keep a database of those children on their mobile phone. Because what's the mobile phone? It's a computer. What's a SIM card? It's a memory card. It's like a hard drive, but smaller. But it's certainly more than big enough for them to be able to store information about the 75 kids that they see, the kid's name and birth date and mother's name and their vaccination history. Why can't we do this? We can. We can, in many cases we are. How about, again, another medical example, how about reminding parents when their kids need to be vaccinated? I mean, what percentage, even in the United States, what percentage of kids don't get vaccinated or don't get vaccinated on time because their parents forget they have to take them? I mean, it's got to be, I'm guessing here, but I think I think in the United States it's something like about 5% of initial vaccination visits get missed. I can tell you in rural Africa, it's more, right? It's higher. But the fact is, if you could, simply by sending out a text message to the parent, to the ever-increasing populations of parents in Southeast Asia, for example, that have a cell phone. If you could send a text message a week before the vaccination visit, and then the day before the vaccination visit, and the morning of the vaccination visit, if you could increase vaccination by 5% for the childhood vaccines, you'd be saving probably hundreds of thousands of lives at the cost of a few SMSs per child per year for little kids, which would be easily the most cost-effective public health intervention since separating sewer water from drinking water. Right. Incredible, incredible benefits achievable with the computer that's already there. You don't have to provide the hardware at all.